big meet on Sunday in London. Yared Nuguse, I think Robert had some doubts about without Jakob Ingebrigtsen, would he be able to take control and win this thing? He did, and I thought it was a masterful race by Nuguse. Stuart McSwain of Australia opened up a gap. It was as big as 9 meters. Nuguse, when he noticed it was maybe getting a little too big, he went to the front of that chase pack. He made sure it didn't go too big. Navas passed him on the bell lap right with 400 to go. Nuguse, great position, stalked him the whole way, and then made his winning move midway down the home straight. Played it perfectly, gets the win, 330.44. The first American man to win a Diamond League 1500 or mile since Leo Manzano in 2011. Just the second overall. Those are the only guys who have ever done it. Perfect way for him to go into the World Championships in Budapest. I was really impressed by this run. What do you guys make of it?
Big picture, when I'm nitpicking this run, it shows how damn well Yared Nuguse is running. If he didn't win, I was going to be very disappointed. And then afterwards, I'm like, oh, wow, he barely beat Narv Nordas. Like, that guy's I thought he was a 10K runner. I never heard of this guy this year. I'm like, oh, wow, Neil Gorley closed faster than him. I mean, this is something Matthew Centrowitz never did. Leo Manzano, like, it's crazy. So he's running so well. He's number 2 in the world, I think, clearly right now at 1,500 meters. Yeah, there's stuff you could sort of say, oh, man, at Worlds, he could be vulnerable. Yeah, vulnerable to not get a medal. I mean, he's starting from such a damn high standard right now. He could easily walk away with a gold medal. I shouldn't say easily, but I mean, like, there's something wrong with me when I sort of focus on the negative. He did the salute. I like that. I've always liked that. I didn't think about that. Maybe he was influenced by Paul Chelimo. Maybe that's what you're supposed to do, right? Is Paul Chelimo the last American male to win a Diamond League?
I think so, in terms of distance runners. I mean, if you're not, Brazier won a couple in 2019, if you're counting mid-D. But yeah, I think Chelimo won also in London. It's interesting. London's like a big hotspot for Americans. Manzano won his Diamond League in London. Centro won in London in 2018, though it wasn't a Diamond League points event. But to me, the other impressive thing about Nuguse is, like, he just shows up. We were expecting this level. This wasn't like some big shock. This wasn't like, wow, he had to run the race of his life. He goes to a Diamond League. He runs 330, which is a time very few, like 5 Americans have ever run that fast, essentially. And for Nuguse, it's just like, yeah, this is the level he's been at all year. I'm not surprised, but we don't see this happen. Centro in 2015 was second in a couple Diamond Leagues. Obviously, in the championships, he was one of the best runners of his generation. But to consistently perform at this level in Diamond League events, we haven't seen this from an American athlete. Like, I put this stat together. Centro's best finish in Diamond Leagues in his career was second, and third. Those were his 3 best ever. Yared Nuguse has run 3 Diamond Leagues in his entire life. First, second, and third. It's crazy.
That's a great stat, but I'm known for my contrarian takes. I mean, I was the leader of the Yared Nuguse bandwagon years ago. And for some reason, I'd sour on him. I said earlier in the year, I said he would never lose to his teammates. Then I'm like, oh, Garcia Roma's going to beat him soon. I thought he was going to lose this race for some reason. I thought he was past his peak. I guess when I saw Joe Wascom get ahead of him at USA's, it made me nervous. Look, he was very good in this race, John. It wasn't like masterful like you told it to me. I mean, it was a fast race. He had a perfect trip. He was up near the front the whole time. And if we're going to be concerned about things, I'll say a few things. He barely beat Norv Nordas. I mean, Norv Nordas, the guy, Let's Run podcast listener, I should be rooting for him. By the way, I'm watching a replay right now. I love it when he bumps Stewie McSwain by mistake there. Almost won a Diamond League? Now, do you think Nuguse was just knew he had it in the bag? I mean, this is a crazy race. I'm looking right now, the last 200 meters. Like, the entire field is there with 200 meters to go. The entire field is there. I thought Chariot might get Nuguse with 100 to go, and Chariot ends up, he's third right here, coming off the 100 meters to go, and he ends up, what, 8th place?
I told you guys he's cooked, man.
Well, the reason I would call this masterful, Robert, is this could be what we see at Worlds. Like maybe, okay, is it possible that the field just lets Jakob get this big lead if he tries to run like 3:28 pace in the final? I think that's possible. I think there's probably going to be one or two people who just try to stick and go with him.
John, I was wondering that when this race ended, my main thought was, okay, I'm the one worried about Jakob in the 1500. No, I think he's going to win it. Like he's better. These guys struggle to run 3:30. You know, that's a really good performance for him. Jakob can run that in his sleep. Now, admittedly, he's had rabbiting help, but I think he's going to run. I mean, we saw it last year. He ran 3:29 from the front low and got beat because someone did. I think, but I was wondering the same thing. Maybe they just let him go, and then everybody else is battling it out for second. But I think Kacher would go with him. I think
people will go with him in Budapest. I think so.
But if you're smart, you might want to sit back. I mean, it just depends. Like that's the thing that makes the 1500 so wonderful is there's a lot of guys. Basically, anyone in the final has a chance of medaling when we get there because I mean, this race there was only difference between first place and 14th place was less than 2 seconds. So there's going to be a lot of guys that want to be in like at least 5th or 6th. There's not enough space for them, but you don't want to be making energy. So is everyone going to try to get up in 2nd and 3rd the first 100? Or if it's super fast, that may help things. People just sort of get in line and then hope that, have a smooth trip because if you're making micro moves, you're wasting a lot of energy. So my first thing was, what does this mean for Worlds in terms of, I think Jakob's going to win. But again, let me be Debbie Downer here, John. We're talking about Manzano's win in London 2011. How did Manzano do? Well, first of all, do you know who was in that race, John? In London 2011?
The runner-up was Bernard Lagat. Americans went 1-2. I don't know who else was in the race.
Well, just none of the medalists from the 2011 Worlds. It was
Lagat didn't medal in the 15 that year?
Lagat went for the 5,000 only that year.
Oh, yeah. Centro medaled. Yeah, that's right.
Kiprop, Silas Kipagot, and a man by the name of Matthew Sintrowitz were the medalists. No one that Manzano beat medaled. And wait, I'm looking down the results here, 2011 World's Final on Wikipedia. I don't see the name Leo Manzano even in it.
Wait a second. So we're supposed to penalize Nuguse because the last time an American won a Diamond League 1500 12 years ago, he didn't end up making the final? I'm sorry, I don't buy that logic.
Just saying anything's possible. No. But what's amazed me about Nuguse is the consistency all year. He's been amazing. He's been on top of his game. There's been really no subpar races. Everything's been near like the super high performance. It was good, but Neil Gorley was the best guy in the last lap by a significant margin. Ran a half second faster than Nuguse. Ran a lot more ground on the last lap. Last year, World Athletics was publishing these things where it showed you how many meters everybody ran. I can't find that for this race. I don't know if they've stopped doing it this year or not.
No, they did it for Monaco, I think, or they've done it for some races this year, but not all of them. I did like that stat. But
I need to get out my pen and paper and do a diagram of this race, go back and look at it and see how Gorley's doing.
Yeah.
But no, it was a good win. He's clearly doing well. He's by far our best medalist hope over 800 meters. So that's one thing we can talk about later in the show. I mean, I think the women in the 800 obviously thought we're going to at least rack up one medal. After that, Nuguse is clearly the second best medal hope for us as Americans, mid distance or distance, over 800 meters. And I don't know who else could even conceivably medal.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But Robert, I wanted to address something that you guys were discussing here. You're saying, "Oh, Nuguse, you weren't that impressed tactically." Like, to me, I thought he played this thing basically perfect tactically. You're like, "Oh, he got an easy ride along in second place or third place." Well, that's the point. That's what getting you into a good position and defending it. That's what earns you that easy ride. Like, there's a reason why he beat Neil Gorley. It's Neil Gorley was running faster at the end, but he wasn't positioned in the same way. And Neil Gorley admitted he made some mistakes. So to me, that's absolutely crucial, is if you're in a world championship final, getting into a good position behind Jakob if he's leading it out, that could be the difference between meddling and not meddling. Like, why was Whiteman was poised to strike when he made his move? If he's further back, he's not going to be able to run everyone down from 10th place at the bell. So I was impressed by that. And I guess this comes back to one of our classic debates on this show. You don't think positioning and tactics really matters that much in the 1500, and I do. And I think that cost Neil Gourley the win because he was coming from further back. He had to run extra distance on the last lap. If he's up where Nuguse is, he wins that.
Why do you think I don't think tactics are important?
Because you tell me that all the time. You're like, oh, this is your overrated positioning tactics. Weldon, am I crazy here? This seems to be, I feel like this is one of Robert's arguments.
I think Rojo's all about the tactics, John. He's made videos highlighting the tactics of the 1500. But I do feel like sometimes he tries to downplay them. So how can you be Mr. Tactics, Robert, and Mr. Non-Tactics? Because when I was thinking this race, I'm like, oh, Robert should make one of his tactical videos. But at times, John, he tries to play it both ways.
Okay, I've watched the video a couple times as we've been recording again. One other thing that should make Jakob feel good is Nuguse was kind of out front a lot of the time, leading the chase pack. So he had nowhere. I mean, he had a guy to just key off of, but he was breaking the wind for the field, and he still beat all these other guys. So that should also feel good for Nuguse fans. Like, he was serving as the rabbit for the chase pack and still beat them. But no, look, my thing on tactics is I used to always tell my guys at Cornell, and I thought that they were smart. I was like, look, it always opens up. Now, with 13 guys that have the same ability, maybe that's a little bit different, but at the college level, particularly in the 800, I'm always like, you rarely see someone get boxed that they can't do it. The key is not to panic and make a lot of moves. Again, number one mantra, 800, you got one move. 1500, you might have two, but if you're ever in the back of the field and you try to move to the front, you keep going till you get to the goddamn front. Do not move up from 10th to 3rd and then run the turn and get scared that you're in the turn and then go back to 8th in the rail. Just keep going until you get up there where you want to be. And actually, Nordes did that good job of that. He was way back early. One thing that about the positioning, though, that's interesting is, everybody would like to be up in 3rd or 4th with a clear trip, I think. But some of these guys may not want to go out that hard. I mean, clearly, a lot of these guys, it's just a little bit more comfortable to go out a little bit slower and work your way into the race.
Yeah, one of my things looking at this result, it did make me think of Worlds. Like, how many people will run for gold versus just running for a medal? Because I do think if some people try to stick with Jakob, there might be others who hang back and like, I'll run down one of the people who can't hang on. But you probably won't get gold that way because it's either going to be Jakob or someone who's with him the whole time winning that race. But the other thing is just the times are so much faster these days than they have been in previous years. Andrew Koskinen of Ireland ran 3:32 in this race and got 14th place. That 14th place in 3:32. When have we ever seen that before? It's crazy. Great Britain had 3 guys under 3:32 in that race, which is the same number of Americans who have broken 3:32 since the start of 2015. They had it in one race. Neil Gourley, Elliot Giles, and Matthew Stonia. So that's when I look at the World Championships, I think the gap between Jakob and Yared Nuguse, who I'd say is the number 2 guy. You could make a case for Katir, who was second in Oslo. I think that gap is much larger than the gap is from 2 to maybe like 5 or 6. I just think there's a bunch of guys who, Nuguse, I would probably give the best chance of medaling outside of Ingebrigtsen, but there's a lot of guys in that mix who, if they time it right, could get there. And I'm curious what you guys made of Cole Hawker's run. There was another American in this race. He runs 3:32.14. It's 0.74 off his PB from the Olympic final. It's his second fastest time of his career. That's the good news. The bad news is he was 13th place in this race. So do you guys think this is progress? He ran faster than he has for 2 years? Or he's only 13th? What's the takeaway for you guys on Cole Hawker?